Hi, and welcome to part 3 of Guilt. We've done 2 other episodes this week on guilt. The first one was just identifying expectations and real expectations and fake expectations and whether or not we're meeting them. The second one was talking all about how we feel guilty in sin and really understanding if it's really things we should be feel guilty about, that there really is sin in our lives, and how to move out of both of those things and become a more positive, useful person for God's purposes, and just have positive life change out of guilt. And so this is part 3, and we're today talking about manipulation. And for some people, that's going to strike right to the core of who they are. And some people experience that multiple times a day from people that are close to them, or people that they encounter in work situations or in life situations or relationships. So we're going to talk about manipulation and the guilt that produces, and how that is not fruitful. That is not something that is going to produce good, positive relationships, good, positive lifestyles. When people are manipulating us, or when we're manipulating either other people. And so we're going to really dive into manipulation and how not to do that, and then and how not to be manipulated and how not to manipulate, also identifying if those things are happening. And then out of the backside is, how do we change those relationships into positive ones that impact the world, impact our lives, impact other people's lives for God. So it's going to be a really, we want to dive deep into this. And what comes to mind initially for me is just seeing people that are manipulated day to day. They may not even understand that they're being manipulated. I've seen it in relationships that have been around me. I've seen it in family relationships that have been around me, and friendships that have been around me. Heck, I've probably even been involved in some of them myself. And I'm pretty sure that I have, as I'm thinking about it right now. But manipulation comes in many forms. But manipulation is basically guilting someone to do what you want them to do, so that you get out of it what you want to get out of it. I was telling Gary off air right before this that I was actually looking and watching the Goldbergs last night. And the Goldbergs, you've heard me talk about it before. I love that show, but it fit perfectly with what we're talking about today. And that is that Bev Goldberg, the mom, was in the backyard having brunch with her friends, and in comes Barry, the son, the middle son, the left-handed middle son, as I found out in the last couple episodes. But he comes through with his JTP posse, his friends, and they want to play football in the backyard, but mom is having brunch. And they somehow make their way into the kitchen, and Barry basically says to his mom, "Don't you love me? Don't you want the best for me? Don't you want me to really enjoy my friends and my time and all this stuff? And don't you care about me?" And that's the trigger for Bev, the mom. She loves her family and wants them to be the best that they have, and she has unreal expectations of what they can become and what they need. And she immediately feels guilty and says, "You can have the backyard." And so they go in the backyard, and her friends look over at her and say, "Don't you understand what that kid just did to you, that he manipulated you into getting what he wanted?" And she realizes that and makes change. And I think that happens a lot in life, is people can manipulate you into doing what they want you to do. Some people call that being puppeted, that person manipulating is being a puppeteer. But I've seen it in life where people say, "Oh, can you please do this for me and be a great friend, and you know, you're my best friend and I love you so much. Could you please help me out here?" Or through manipulation, they say, "Well, if you love me, you'd do this." I've seen that in relationships. If you love me, you'd do this. People manipulate people. And there are people who are master manipulators who will pick and pick and pick and really want to get you to do what they want you to do. And I think it's very important that we realize when that's happening, when people are manipulating us, and not feeling guilty because of it, because that's what feeds into the manipulation. Is you feel guilty because you haven't done what they want, what they expect. And therefore,
and the minute you show that, now you've given them the key to your little kingdom.
Yes, and so now they know how to continue to get what they want.
Yeah.
And so we need to identify that and identify when people are doing that to us. And sometimes it takes friends, like it did for Bev, for her friends, to say they're manipulating you.
Yeah.
And sometimes we need to hear that, and sometimes we hear that, but we have a deaf ear to it because we don't want to hear that. We don't want to confront that, and we don't want that relationship to be strained or have confrontation because of that.
Yeah. And I think there's a second side to that too. Like, so the son knew he knew the mom's, he knew Bev's weakness, and he exploited it. All manipulation is selfish, but some of it is sinister in the fact that I know what I'm doing and I know why I'm doing it, and I will get what I want. And there's manipulation that I don't even think that the person who's doing the manipulating knows why. And that's, you go back to a past podcast where we talked about the soul ID, these needs that have to be met. And sometimes you manipulate people just to get that need met that is just so desperate. A young woman who been rejected and cheated on, and then her next husband, she gets remarried to a great guy, and now she's trying to control him. Where are you gone? Let me see your phone. Who's your... she manipulates him to know where he's at every time. That's how she feels certain. I don't think she thinks, how can I manipulate my husband today? But she constructs the life around him to get him to do what she needs to have that need met. And that's a need that will be met. So I don't think it's sinister in that way. We do that with love. I'm part Jewish, so manipulation and guilt is just, I know people say, well, that's a generalization. Well, yes, because it's generally true. And people do that, parents do that with love. If I can guilt you, I can feel love. That's how I know. That's a need I need to have met. It's different than a sinister, I know what I'm doing and I don't care about your feelings. I think, so that goes back to your point, Jeremy, of not only identifying MIB, but what kind is it? So when I realize someone's out to do this in a manipulative way and knowing what they're doing, I could get angry or really feel used. But if I realized I'm being manipulated, not out of a sinister way, but someone's just trying to get their needs met in a way they don't even know they're doing, now for me, I could probably execute grace at a greater potential there than someone who's just really trying to hurt me.
So how do we tangibly identify if we're being manipulated? I mean, what are things that we can look for in our relationships that we can either know that we're being manipulated or know that we're manipulating people? Because I think that those things can sometimes look the same in a lot of ways. So what are some things that we can look for that we can tangibly understand about that relationship to know if that's happening?
I agree with you. I think they both look the same. Heads, I have a quarter. Tails, I have a quarter. So a little bit of it is motivation, or the end result is who's benefiting this? Who's benefiting with this? In marriage counseling, I'll ask a couple, like if someone asked you why you married your spouse, what would your answer be? And if it's they made me feel good, they make me happy, or they do things for me, that's a very selfish motive. And I don't know that you would know that as manipulation. So if I look at, am I being manipulated? I look at, it sounds really harsh, but is there anything in this for me? But it would be something for me if we go back to 2 podcasts later that I want to be a pleaser, and I'll fall to that. But I think more so is, how do I know that I'm manipulating? That's what I care more about. And if I care more about my end result, getting my need met, more than what I had to put that person through to meet that, I have become the manipulator.
Well, and I think with that, one of the things you could probably do, and I'm just shooting from the hip here, is you could probably look back at, well, how does that relationship make you feel?
Yep.
Do you feel those things? Do you feel like that person is more about themselves than you?
Yep.
You could probably even go back and look at your text conversations and say, okay, if I read through these text conversations, would I see more of them?
You're identifying patterns at that time.
Than me, or me than them, because maybe I'm manipulating, and every time I look, it's, can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? This is how I'm feeling, instead of how are things going today? How are you doing? Things like that. You could probably start right now and start focusing in on your conversation, say, okay, how many times is it me talking about me rather than wondering about them, and how much of a give and take is there? I mean, there could be like 60-40. There could be even 70-30, but if it's like 90-10 or 95-10, you may need to do something with
Houston,
that.
we have a problem here.
Exactly. Well, and there's even smaller ways. I was just talking to Gary off air is, for me, I can realize how I manipulate a little bit too, in that, like, when my wife asked me to go to the grocery store on the way home to get milk, if she texts me and says, hey, can you get milk on the way home? My instant reaction a lot of times is, I'm so tired. Can we just do this later? And that's my way to manipulate my way out of it without knowing that I'm manipulating.
Yeah.
Is I'm thinking, I just don't want to do this. So, if I explain that I'm tired and I'm exhausted, then I don't have to do it. And that is somewhat of a manipulation in itself. And by can't we do this later? Sometimes I'm actually thinking, can't you do this later?
Yeah.
So I'm looking looking out for number one, and I'm not saying that I don't want to do it. I'm saying, well, can't we do it later? Can I come home first? Can I do this?
Now, what's your wife's usual response at that?
It really depends. Okay. It depends on how much we need milk, I guess. But, but I think unknowingly I can set that precedence and that thought pattern of, what? Is next time she's ready to ask if I can do something, she's now thinking, oh, Jeremy's going to be exhausted. Yeah. Jeremy's tired. He just got off a long day at work. I'm not going to ask. So in a certain way, I can see how that is a manipulation, because I'm skewing her mindset to say, I don't want to ask even though I need this, because of the way that the response is going to happen.
Yeah. One of the fundamental rules is we train people how to treat us, and we do that by manipulation. Yeah.
And unknowingly doing that.
Yeah. And because we've talked about unknowing, and then I think there are very few examples of someone just sinisterly manipulating you. Those would be the sociopaths who have no feelings, no remorse, and no emotions. Most people, I think, they're just trying to have a need met. It sounds selfish, but it seems like the easy way. Yeah. I don't think there's sinisterness. I just created a word in that.
But there are people out there that do that.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I think you need to identify, do you have people in your lives that do that?
Yep.
People that feel like leeches.
Yep.
People that feel like they are constantly needing to be in your lives might be some of those people. There might be other reasons too.
Yep.
But people that you feel like you're always having to do something for them because they can't do it for themselves. Mm-hmm. People that are constantly giving you reasons to do things. Like, if you love me, you would do this.
Yeah.
You know what? Another way to do it is, I'll make you this if you do this. Yeah. I'll give you cookies. I'll make dinner if you come over. Parents sometimes do that when their kids just start going out of the house. I want you to come over, so I'm going to give you that incentive to do it.
Yeah.
Or that incentive to what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of obtain my love. Obtain my affection. This is the way I'm loved, by having time with you, and you're not spending time with me, so I'm going to make you want to spend time with me. Yeah. So I think there are those I don't know if sinister is the right word, but a little bit more intentional.
Intentional is a good word.
Intentional ways that people do that because they want that outcome. And so I think you can have people like that. I also think you can have those sinister people like that. And so you need to identify those people early on, so you don't get in these poor relationships where you just feel guilt-ridden if you don't spend time with them, if you don't do things for them, if you don't really meet their expectations day in and day out, conversation in and conversation out, duty and duty out. So I think that's important that we identify those people too. But once we've identified those people, and identified if we're a manipulator or if we're being manipulated, how do we get out of those times of guilt of not meeting their expectations, and how do we explain to those people or go to those people and say that we've been doing it and come to a positive outcome? How do we take this guilt, this manipulation that's been happening, and make it a positive thing, and how do we restore that relationship to a positive way of relating to them?
That's a great point, because manipulation will destroy relationships. And what we do know is, like, there's three types of relationship. There's one that person does what they want, the other person does what they want or get their own needs met. Then there's people who barter to have their needs met, kind of like you were saying, you do this and I'll do this. But relationships that really work are those who I will give to you with no expectation back. And so I think, let's look at the first one. If I think I'm being manipulated, I have to trust in myself. I have to be aware of that. And then I think that's where the Bible talks about speaking truth in love. And I go to them and say, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I've recognized this, and I can't do this because it's not good for me. It feeds one of my issues. I realize that I feel like I have to be loved, and I don't want to have to perform for you just to be loved. So I think it's that speaking truth in love to someone who is manipulating you.
So almost a confrontation of, you know what, this is what I've noticed. And not doing so in an anger, a frustration.
Correct. Your delivery system is huge.
Yes. Yeah. To restore the relationship, you just need to go, this is the way I've felt that our relationship is going. And so these are the things that I need to start seeing out of our relationship, rather than you do this and you need to stop. It's more of, this is what needs to happen in order for us to have a better relationship. Yeah. I think if you look at it as a prism of, this is how we, instead of you or I, this is how we have a better relationship. And you're looking at the outcome rather than the cause and effect. I think that's a better way to go about it.
I have to stop doing this, not because I don't care for you. It's not that I changed, but I can't keep doing this. It's not good for either one of us. And because I love you, I'm having this conversation with you. Again, you're not beating someone down and causing that guilt and condemnation we've been talking about for 3 days. So, and then I guess if I realize I'm the one that in essence is the manipulator, I think at that point I have to admit it. I have to ask for forgiveness. I didn't even realize I'm doing this, but I have been manipulating you to get what I need. And so I think you ask for forgiveness. And then I think the third part is one that's always missed, is I have to forgive myself and find out, first of all, I think I have to identify, why do I do this? What need am I meeting by doing this? I manipulate them because I want them to love me. Then I'm having a need met of love that's incorrect. So how do I have a correct love relation with somebody? So I think I apologize to them, ask forgiveness, and then I need to forgive myself for being the manipulator.
Well, I think part of that too is also, if you are the one manipulating, is because I'm thinking about this as I'm realizing that I do this sometimes, is I need to start, instead of thinking, what can I get out of it, or how can I have my needs met, is how can I meet needs? And really is, how can I put others first? And if you wake up with that mindset, if you put on that mindset every couple hours, I think it helps out. I'm learning to do this more actually right now. And I didn't think this would come up in this podcast, but I'm learning to instead of say, how can I get through today, survival mode, like we talked about a couple podcasts ago, is how can I serve my wife? How can I love my kids? How can I play with my kids when I get home? And it doesn't always work. It hasn't worked in the last couple of days because the last couple of days have been super stressful. Yeah. But I think if you continue to go down that road, you will only see progress in it.
Yeah, you have to train yourself. And this may be a shock to you, but Scripture addresses this as it does most everything. Philippians 2, he says, to do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceits. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, which is exactly what you're talking about. Not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of the others. You know what that means? That means if I'm looking at meeting your needs, Jeremy, and your interests, and you're looking at mine, both of our needs are being met, but not in a selfish way, in a Christ-like way.
Well, and whether or not you're manipulating or being manipulated or not, this is good to do.
Absolutely,
and to think about and ponder on and really meditate on is, you know what? I need to put others first.
Yes.
I actually read that scripture the other day, and it's funny that you bring it up. But if you're looking out for the interest of others as your life goal, as your day goal of your hour goal,
your chance of manipulation are far and few between.
Yes, and feeling manipulated, because if your interest is to help out others and people are manipulating you, you're not even going to know, and you're not even going to care.
Yep.
And it's not going to damage your relationship because that's your goal.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And so what we've just talked about is the third piece, where I look at others' needs first. And if I, as you said, if I do that well, both of us get our needs met in a way that's non-manipulative and encouraging, and that only will strengthen a relationship. Manipulation tears apart a relationship. Looking out for others' interest above your own, solidifies a relationship.
And so I think that is all important, that we identify if we are manipulating, if we are being manipulated, if it's real, if it's not, but also just working through those relationships to come to a place of restoration where we are feeling restored, and that those relationships now become positive and encouraging, fruitful relationships that are really foundational, life building relationships that we can have, deep relationships that we can have. So I just hope that everyone can do that. I hope that it's something that can help you, and I hope that we can move from places of manipulation to places of places of manipulation and places that we feel like other people's needs are being met, or our needs are being met too, where we're trying to meet other people's needs and manipulation doesn't matter any longer. So I pray that we can all try to do that. I pray that we can get better at that, and that we can put others' needs above ourselves, others' interests above ourselves. And hopefully you got a lot out of this, and tune in tomorrow for part 4. Thanks for listening.